Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Joint Flows. Today we are joined by Adam Weeks. Adam is a sales leader over at Bigtincan. He's big within the sales enablement space. And interestingly enough, is also an Army veteran as well. Adam, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks everyone for having me on. It's great to be here, and yeah, hopefully this podcast can end up to the rest of them that they so no pressure on me.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it, Adam. I guess a good place to start is to put a bit of color behind your background for our listeners. So talk us through your journey so far, how you've got to where you are, and yeah, let's hear all about that.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, my name is Adam Weeks. I'm sales lead at Bigtincan, but never started my career here. Next year it'll be 20 years ago that I joined the British Army when I was 16. So I've given my age away there. And was in the army for many years, traveled to different parts of the Middle East, across Europe, which at a young age really sort of, I guess, give me a bit of structure to life, I guess, in a way. And then I've been in SaaS sales for probably close to 10 plus years now, working in, I guess, boiler room type environments, so calling out of the yellow pages. Anyone doesn't know who they are, go and Google it. They're now artifacts, all the way through to, fast growth startups to enablement solutions, helping all different types of companies. So I guess it's been an interesting journey, and I'm sure if I wrote a book, it probably wouldn't be that boring, but plenty of other stories to go with that. But yeah, I've been at Bigtincan almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
And I was the first sales rep on the ground here in EMEA for them back in 2020, just before COVID hit. So which seems like a distant memory away, but here we are, still going strong, and yeah, great to meet you both.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. So a good place to start is along that journey. So a couple of interesting things you said there. Being the first man on the ground within EMEA, and obviously now leading the team within EMEA as well. Talk a little bit about that journey. What's that been like? What kind of changes have you seen as well?
Yeah, so I didn't actually realize that I was going to be that sort of first person back at the beginning. My VPR report to was in Boston at the time, and I guess life, how I saw it and how they saw it, was going to be very different to the way things had planned. I'm sure same with yourselves with COVID coming into play. Being first on the ground was interesting because there was only a handful of us in back in 2020, so it was quite a small knit team, and you got to know people quite well, and I guess you had to gel quite quickly. Also, which I think some people struggle with. Some take it on their chin and off they go. But I guess it was a bit of a sink or swim type scenario. And then obviously with COVID coming in, luckily enough, being able to work at an enablement company, having a solution that helped me, it just was able to keep me grounded, keep me interested, and ultimately help me, sort of book meetings, close business. And as we've come out of it and transitioned, people have gone from, well, we need one solution, to we're not sure if we need this now, to, oh no, we do need this. It's been an interesting few years. And I think at the moment where the industry is, it's almost, I'd say, not that crossing the chasm type area, but it's very much like on that knife edge where is it going to go? Like, is it going to evolve again? Is there going to be more players? Are we going to see consolidation of players into one? And yeah, there's a lot of trends coming out at the moment for still remote workforce, which is pretty cool because people are trying to get back into the office. However, there's still those people that are out there, like I am. I'm working from home today, and I'm probably going to see a customer too tomorrow, so I'll need my stuff with me. So it's still a little bit turbulent, I think, probably be
Yeah,
the best word to say.
I agree with you, and I think that
Yeah, no.
there's still quite a lot of companies trying to find the right ratio between in office versus at home.
Yeah.
But to go back to your first man on the ground experience, like what was it like to get started? Like, how did you get to go and implement your strategy, understand what the status was, and then go find the first new clients?
I
Yeah.
just
So
before Mick does. Mick was also the first man on the ground, which is why I'm so interested. Yeah.
so I think for me it was, I have an entire, the whole of EMEA to go after, right? So, and you think how many businesses there are. There's so many different industries that you can sell into, but where do you even begin? And a lot of people will try and spin 10, 15 plates in one go, when actually you probably just need about 4 or 5 going, right? So really for me, it was understanding, and this is a massive part, so my SDRs watching this and AEs will realize this, is customer stories. I talk about it all the time. Those case studies, the videos that marketing have either spent money on or have fought tooth and nail to go and get a customer to agree to doing a case study. I don't think enough salespeople, regardless of what position you're in, really learn them. I think it's so vital, especially if you're a new person in a new territory. You need to go prepared into battle, I guess, with all those case studies and understand them. For me, when I realized we had more case studies in one particular industry than others, I was like, okay, well, people are going to want to know who Bigtincan are. They're going to want to know who we work with and what we do and why they should speak to me. So if I can have as many case studies and use cases as physically possible, the route that I go down should be a lot easier than a route where I have very minimal information. So it was trying to almost find not a silver bullet, but an easier path to one where you're just sort of going, I think we should go this way.
It's I agree. I think they are a lot of, we speak to a lot of first man or women, first people on the ground here, and there's always the debate around, am I going wide or am I going into a specific niche based on previous successes? But what they do struggle with is, how do they manage the expectation with leadership? Because often is, I'm going to open a new market, I'm going to put salespeople on the ground, and my ARR, whatever your metric is, should go up, right? And often it takes longer than it was planned for. What's your experience around this?
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't about going after the big logos immediately, like as much as we all want to, right? We love land in Wales, but I guess that's probably a reason why I've got a really bad hairline now and a lot more grey hairs, because they are so stressful. But I think it's, can we work with sort of small to medium enterprises? If so, cool. Who are they? Let's use Sales Navigator to try and narrow down who they are. Can we work with ones that are in the UK, or predominantly would be, are happy to speak in English? I know there's some countries across EMEA that won't entertain an English conversation, so maybe you want to give them a bit of a wide berth. So for me, it was, okay, so let's, we know the industry we're really good at because we have lots of case studies. Let's go in at, say, 200 to 500 employees, because we know that there is going to be a need there. However, we can decision makers easier, and we can easily deploy to those type, because they're going to have anywhere between, say, 50 and 100 sales reps, right? So it makes it more manageable, and the deal sizes aren't enormous to put people off going, oh no, we need a full business plan, or we need 20 other people to see this. It's like, I get it, I understand it, cost is reasonable, this makes complete sense. So that's sort of the rule of thumb sort of I took, and if I was to start a business tomorrow, I would just use the same sort of format as I did when I first started at Bigtincan, and it was the same at the previous company and the one before that and the one before that, because it's just worked for me in the past, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you've been the first man on, we'll wrap up the first man on the ground question. There's a lot more to you than being the first man on the ground, but being the first man here within EMEA, obviously the company I believe is based in the US, is that right?
Yeah, so Bigtincan's headquartered in Boston, but
Yeah.
funny enough, we're actually, which some people don't realize, we're actually an Australian company.
Oh.
So we're on the Australian Stock Exchange. So it's, yeah, some people are like, oh, you're an American company, you know, it's like, yeah, sort of, but we're also an Australian.
Yeah, my question was that in these instances, what I often find is that there's nuances between the market, right? So you might have had success within one specific geographic location, but it doesn't necessarily mean, all right, let's just open up within this market now and expect to have the same results. So
Yeah.
what did you do to adjust to this? Because I appreciate what you said about having these case studies, and these stories are always vital to have, but there's specific nuances that occur between market to market, and sometimes it can be your downfall because
Yeah.
it just means that it doesn't translate as well, or sometimes it can be great because it's like, hey, you're only on the cusp of it here, there's so much more to go. So how did you adjust to that, and what was your experiences like?
I mean, it definitely wasn't easy. You know, listening to calls in the US to, you know, from some other AEs, STRs, and you sat going, why does that sound so easy compared to the calls that I'm having? And it definitely, you're absolutely right. You know, it just because you're successful in one region doesn't mean it's going to be successful in the next. So you have to pivot on what people are asking for. So I guess for me, and the experience that I find was everybody wanted more information around ROI. They wanted to see, you know, what's the analytics I get from this? You know, do I stay put with what I've got? What do you do differently? And it was really understanding, okay, well, what do we do differently? You know, why would that person be interested in those analytics? You know, how could that help them in their role? So for me, and now you know the team is experiencing this, you know, across EMEA at the moment, is where people are becoming more interested in enablement solutions. It's like, well, you got to show them what the outcomes are before you show them anything else, because there's too many companies now that are trying to do everything, but they spread themselves too thinly. So what you want to do is come back to the whole reason why there were these enablement solutions were here in the first place, and it was better understanding what's working for people so that you can then replicate that across the business and hopefully drive revenue. So back to your point, it is let's show you what you can measure. This is the difference between us and, I don't know, a SharePoint site as an example. And this is what you're going to get back. And I think that was the education that we're having to give to people and educate them that they do get this from it. And it's not just another content repository that some people thought at the beginning.
Yeah.
I love this because we've been speaking. We had, you know, the likes of Kieran Smith and Kunal on the podcast, sorry, and they all speak about impact, and they all speak about being able to measure initiatives, but to also proactively be part of the bigger conversations. When it comes to like analytics and data, there's also almost a consensus around data fluency and data mechanics, where leaders don't necessarily have the right skill set to even get started with understanding what's happening through the data points. Is this something you notice as well, or am I just like completely off track? Which might be the case. Like I'm often very often.
No, I don't. I think it's it's so, sometimes it's so new to them, they really just feel alienated of like, wow, okay, I've never, what the hell is this data? Like, what do I do with it? Like, what is it telling me? And yeah, you're right. You know, some people, it is again another educational piece where you have to have those case studies, you have to have those use cases in the back of your head as to what those companies are doing with your platform. And I think, you know, it's not just the old tale of sales and marketing bridging the gap. You also then got to think of your CS and account managers, because they need to give you, the frontline people, the information as to what people are using the analytics for. And sometimes people, previous companies I've worked at, I never spoke to an account manager. I never spoke to customer success. But if I had, I'd know why, you know, what are the real true pain points that people are buying the solution for? and have they evolved since they bought it? And they probably have. We don't just sit still. So when it comes to speaking to marketing leaders and sales leaders on these platforms, you are educating them and giving them examples of typical dashboards that you typically see, and then what to do with that data. It's not a case of just looking at it and going, cool,
Yeah.
it's in the green, but why is it in the green? So yeah, there's there's definitely room for improvement, and I think that's one of the reasons that I've taken to LinkedIn recently and started publishing a lot more on what you can really get from these analytics and the KPIs that you should be setting in place. Because some people just, they just think it's another cool tool to use, but then they actually don't realize the power that it can provide.
Yeah,
absolutely. And we're seeing a big shift for a lot of the businesses that we speak to around when they're talking about revenue and generating revenue. There's almost a focus on expansion within your existing client base versus just purely new logo. I think the thought process is we've got a foot in the door over here. There's a lot of white space within this market for us to go after as well. And so let's put a strategy together for that. How is it that enablement can support it within this process as well? And is there any specific strategies that you see working well?
So, I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know all the strategies for my role is just net new logo. It is your hardcore, knocking on the door, cold calling, cold emailing. That's my role. I love that role. However, how could revenue leaders and enablement leaders support our account managers in expansion? Well, you can use these type of platforms to do so. So if you have other products that you can sell, great, but why does that company care about them? And I think that all comes back to listening to the customer success managers and existing account managers, especially if you're a newbie. Why did you cross-sell that particular piece of that product into that business? What was it that got you in the door? And then it's taking that information and sort of rolling that out across the team. Rather than keeping it to yourself. I think with that and these enablement solutions that are out there is that you can actually see the content that is resonating with those, with those accounts, and taking that data and saying, okay, well, this particular type of business of this size, has engaged in this type of content. You have customers like this, account manager A. You should use this content to that particular customer and see if it resonates with them too. And it's all about trial and error, right? It's never, nothing's ever going to work for everybody. Hence back to, the different markets from North America to the EMEA market. It's a case of just trying, seeing what works and getting the analytics back and then hopefully replicating that across the team. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you an exact strategy on that one, Atish. It's just, it's sort of, I'd just be making it up, and I think that'd be unfair for those who know what they are talking about.
I think you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've had a very impressive career progression within your entirety, the entirety of your career, but more specifically within Bigtincan. What's the way to do it?
Believe in what you sell. Like,
that's it.
Use it. I would not entirely. But I posted about this a few. I think it was probably about last year. I was doing some research on. We were looking at another software provider to help us with something that we were interested in, and also looking at data providers. And I said, one of the questions I asked anybody who's trying to sell me is, well, what's your experience with your tool? And you can always hear in someone's voice if they're sort of lying or they're just over exuberant because they're trying to make up an idea as to like how good it is when actually they're not using it. So for me, when I just got myself right into the solution and understood how it works, which then allowed me to believe in it because I was seeing the real life actions back from the solution itself. So I think believing in it, comes across in your emails, it comes across in your calls, comes across in your demos, but also being accountable for all of the actions that you've taken to get to winning deals, right? So, you are going to follow up at that time. You are going to say this on that call. You are going to show that particular part of the product. You're setting out your agendas correctly and you're doing your follow-ups correctly. And I think, by doing that consistently over and over and over, and gaining the experience, it just allows you to elevate yourself within the business, which then opens up different paths for you as you stay here and helps you progress within the company. And I think having the army background has helped, with discipline, honesty, and confidence. I think plays a part. So not one thing in particular, but if you're selling software, anybody listen to this, like if you're selling software and you don't use it, you're just not helping yourself.
Yeah, you got to drink from your own Kool-Aid.
Exactly.
Up in America, I believe. Great, that's a great bit of insight. A question I wanted to ask you as well is, obviously as a sales leader within the space, and in specific with your view being in the same company for as long as you have, what changes are you seeing within the selling process or the buying process, as it were? And once again, what strategies are you putting in place for your team to overcome these barriers?
Yeah. Like, I guess the whole of LinkedIn has been talking about, there's more people in the buying journey, right? There's far more than probably we've ever had in the history of selling, I think. Gone are the days of just knocking on someone's door, selling them something and walking off. But because you don't know where people live anymore because they're all at home. Well, that's part of the problem. No, I think where businesses have really like the CFO has to account for every dollar. The CRO needs to account for every dollar as well as every individual. And every manager then needs to be accountable for each of those individuals and what they do within their roles, right? So we have seen deals slow down because more people have got involved. So now you got to think of multi-threading. You got to think of why you're multi-threading, why you're speaking to those people. Can you speak to those people? Are you going above your champion? Or are you going around your champion? It's so many things. It's like it's almost like walking through a minefield half the time with some of these deals that people are in. It's just a case of, I guess, managing people's expectations on what you typically see. If I was selling to you, it'd be like, yeah, well, we typically, and you're a sales enablement leader, it's well, we typically see marketing leaders, sales leaders involved in this, but also the CFO involved in this, because we could consolidate many platforms, we could enhance many platforms. So you want to get better dollars for the solution that you bought at the beginning. Yeah. So there's definitely more people involved. There's definitely more questions around like adoption of the solutions. How can we get better adoption? There's also like, what are the analytics do we get back from this? Like, what can you show me that I've never seen before? So we're seeing a lot of that as well. People really wanting to completely dissect the solution and then go, okay, we get everything. We're now going to piece it back together and we'll roll it out. It's a very quick way of closing a deal out that way, but that can take months. So I would say things have taken longer. And also what we've seen, which a lot of people probably experience if you are selling across Europe, is the holiday season is July and August. Wow. Just wow.
Take your time, guys. Take your time.
Yeah. I mean, it's made me think maybe I should take the whole of July and August off myself.
Yeah.
But no, I think, I tell the team, one of the things I tell my SDRs is, if you're calling on a particular individual, you can't get through, hang the phone up and call back for the sales leader. Because at the end of the day, that sales leader is going to have to be involved in this deal because it's going to affect his sales team. So hang up, call the sales leader back. If they don't answer, call the sales operations team. They're going to be involved too. So on one company, depending on how big they are, you could actually put 4 or 5 calls into different areas, because enablement solutions and other platforms out there just don't affect one department. It could affect 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So even at the beginning, before you even get in the door, you're already multi-threading as an SDR, because you have to go and speak to all those different people. And then as an AE, you've also got to think like the SDR and go, well, we've only spoken to this individual. We need to go and connect with these individuals as well. So from the outset on discovery calls, I'm already asking people to think of 3 up and 3 down, who else can we get involved, and be open with people on a discovery call, with who you want to speak to and who you typically see buy these products.
Yeah.
And final thing I'll just add on to that is I was on a discovery call on, what day are we? It's Wednesday today, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was Thursday last week. The woman I'm speaking to, she's like head of customer experience and employee experience at a retail company. And I laid everything on the table, and she was like, no one has asked about other people involved in this process. No one has asked about when are you looking to implement something like a work back plan. And you've also been open and honest with me about pricing. She's like, no one else has done that. And I was like, well, isn't that just what you should be doing? Like, call me crazy. But she was like, no. I said, the only reason I got the information is my SDR went out there and looked at all the different individuals who could be involved in this deal and told me who they were. And she was like, I just have to thank you for that, because like it's been a great experience. Now, if any of my leaders are watching this at Bigtincan, I will try and close that deal, but who knows?
Let's say if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's the I had something like that in my one of my presentations I did at SKO. It was the 7 P's: piss poor preparation. I won't do the whole thing. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yes, don't be the 7 P's where you're not preparing yourself, or you will end up failing. So.
And Adam, just a quick question around enablement itself. So we see a lot of the duration of the average duration, the average tenure of an individual contributor going down to like, I think it's 18 months at the moment. And the onboarding period, the ramp up can take up to 10 months. So you really only have like maybe 2-3 quarters where you're exploiting your sales team as much as possible.
Yeah.
Do you see good ways to shorten that ramp up onboarding phase through the companies you work with?
Yeah, we've seen obviously each industry has different sales cycles lengths, which I think has a direct impact on sort of tenure as well. I think, for example, if you're an enterprise AE and you're doing sort of 6-7 figure deals, like it's a lot harder to keep hold of those people because the sale takes so long, right? So I think your onboarding plan would need to be very tailored to that specific type of individual or that job role within your company, rather than someone who's in the sort of small to medium business, area where the sales cycles are maybe a little bit quicker. What we typically see people that I've worked with and that people are asking for is, can we have a solution that tailors itself to those individuals based on the learning paths that we set out? And I think that's what it all boils down to. It's not every onboarding for each person is the same as the next. So we onboarded one of our SDRs back in December. We wrote out an entire new onboarding program, and the feedback that she had was, I'm so glad that it was video based rather than text based, because it's my attention span isn't as great as it is anyway. But the videos, the questions, the quizzes, the video assignments that are all sort of dotted amongst it kept me on my toes, because I wasn't sure when the next quiz was coming or when the next voice note I had to leave was coming, because I had to really immerse myself into the training. So learning paths is huge. The type of the way you set out your courses also needs to be looked at, or your curriculums. Just do not have people sat there for an hour watching a video. Like it just won't work anymore. We're at home. I have 2 dogs, and I have an almost 3-year-old, like running around the house on a Friday. So if I was to try and do training on a Friday, like the door will just fly open, and it's like that BBC guy where his kid runs in. I have had that happen. You just can't see him because I'm on a standing desk. But it's just all about the engagement, and with the type of tools that are out there now, that you can see where people drop off in the engagement. So make it shorter.
Yeah.
And then replicate that across the team. It's these tools are becoming so sophisticated now, and I'm not even mentioning about AI and all that stuff, because that's a whole it's another ball game. But it's making it easier for us to really understand what's working and what's not. And people are going to end up running out of excuses, unfortunately. But there's tools there to help you. And if you're on the fence, you should definitely reach out to a company, could be me, and I'll be able to help you a bit more. But
yeah, you can't hide anymore. I think it's a good thing, but it's also it can be a bit daunting, I guess, for people who are receiving the training in this case.
Yeah, I mean, if I think on some of the like I've spoken to a few old colleagues of mine, and just somehow their onboarding went, and some of the half the time it was just jump on a couple of calls, read these presentations, listen to a couple of calls, watch a few videos, and off you go. But that isn't really helping me understand what's going to help me win. So that tenure, like you say, coming down, I reckon it's even lower than that. I honestly think it's between sort of 12 and 14 months rather than 18. Just because people are not being engaged, and a lot of companies forget, once you're through the onboarding process, what about continuous learning?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we not doing that? Why? And it's not just about, we need to keep our SDRs on their toes and new cold calling techniques or new email techniques. It's the AEs need the support, the managers need the support, because the world is evolving. Like we just spoke about, deals are taking longer. There's more decision makers in it. So how do you pitch your product? Is it the same way you pitch your product to a sales director? Is it the same way you pitch it to the CFO? Is it the same way you pitch it to, and the list goes on. So yeah, if people aren't doing that yet, it's gonna keep on getting worse.
Yeah.
It was a very long answer. Apologies.
No,
That was good. That was
very
good.
insightful. Thank you. So we are almost out of time. So we do have a bit of a closing tradition on this podcast. So the final question that we ask is, in your whole career to date, what is your favorite memory so far?
My whole career to date and my favorite memory. Can I have 2 or
Go for 2.
just the one? 2? Okay. All right. I think closing my first proper enterprise, like 7-figure deal here at Bigtincan, I think that was a really proud moment. And actually, over the top of my shoulder, you'll see the bottle of champagne that's not empty, by the way, that's up there as a memory to that deal coming in. And then I think the very first the proudest moment of all was being in the army. I think that and being in different places like Iraq and Kuwait and all over the Middle East. I think that's like I'll always have that, and being able to go and do that between the ages of 16 and 23 is not many people do that. So
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so that's my 2 proudest moments, I'd say.
Awesome. Well, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.